Hey everybody, it's Peter again, and today I'm going to do a video on NoRez installation, and I'll talk a little about that. Well, I'll talk a lot about it, and I'm actually going to install some. One cabinet over here has got NoRez installed, the other one is yet to have it installed, and you've seen those cabinets before. They're kind of my test mules that I did some did a finish video on. So we'll use those and take them a step further down the road to completion. A couple of housekeeping things I want to cover first, and I get a lot of queries. Surprisingly, all kinds of queries. I'm a little surprised at the amount of interest in all this. I mean, it was my intention to sort of drum up interest, but I think it's cool that people are kind of eyeballing DIY as a possibility. But that brings us to a point of what is DIY? And just the name kind of says it all. It's do it yourself. And in the world of making things, I'll put it that way because it's what it is, I guess. You know, you have, and it doesn't really matter what it is, whether it's a speaker or a home remodeling project or what have you. DIY is about doing it yourself, and the assumption is that when you're doing it yourself that you're not paying yourself to do it. That's where the money is saved. And so along those lines, there's kind of a hierarchy of cost associated with making a thing, whatever it is. We'll just assume it's speakers in this case. And you know, the first level, lowest cost is going to be you're putting your labor, your time into a process and eliminating paying for that to have someone else do it. And in that hierarchy, DIY is going to be the lowest level of cost. You're going to buy materials, whatever you need. You're going to put your labor into the deal, and that's how you end up with lower cost. Next up that food chain is going to be mass manufacturing. So things that are made in mass, like cars or televisions or anything like that, that's mass produced. You go from a single thing to a many things, and that way you can take the costs and lower it through mass production. And there really are economies of scale. When you can get into building 1,000 of something, you can save time in doing that. But that's not DIY. That's mass production. And then to take that to another step, and I've had a lot of queries about people's personal projects and, you know, can I cut this? Can I do this? Can I make that? And the answer to that is yes, I can do all that, but it's no longer a DIY project at that point. If you're hiring me to do, or anyone for that matter, to do something for you, that's no longer DIY. That is farming out those processes, which I can do. Just to kind of back up a little bit, my intention in starting the whole project, the XLS project, was about getting people involved in the hobby and providing a way that they could do that with maybe minimal woodworking ability and kind of instructions along the way to help you get started. And in doing that, I did something that I didn't anticipate, and that was people assumed that I was in the flat pack business or that I was offering my services as far as woodworking and stuff like that to the world. And in a way, I guess I am, but I guess I have to qualify that and tell you that once we take it out of my little mass production of XLS flat packs and into your custom project, it becomes a custom project. You are paying for my services to do that. So I don't want to exclude the possibility, but I also don't want to paint a picture that the CNC is just a matter of, and a lot of people have been querying me about, you know, cutting stuff on CNC router. It's not a tool that you can just say, I want to build something or another flat pack and plug in some numbers and boom, you cut one out. First of all, it's really wasteful of material to cut a single of anything, but it also involves a lot of my time to do the programming and all the lead-in. There's always testing involved, prototyping. So it's not like running something across a table saw because it's computer based. There's things that you just can't know going in the front end. So I do that all as kind of an explanation to what I'm doing here, which is encouraging people to get into the hobby. If you're interested in having me do a project of yours, don't expect DIY prices. It just isn't going to happen because that's not the way the world of manufacturing and hiring people to do things works. So enough about that. On to, and you're going to see, I'm looking at my notes here because there's a lot of stuff I want to cover. So let's see here. I think I covered all that, probably too much. But anyway, so on to NoRez. You'll see here in front of me, this is NoRez that's cut out and ready to go into a cabinet. And I'm going to cover all that. I'm also going to, these are some prints of PDF files that I'll make available on Google Drive. So I'll link that in the video, and you'll be able to download these. So that's kind of an exploded view of how you can kind of imagine this. I tried to make this really easy to understand so that conceptually you get a handle on it. And then I'm even going to give you, that's going to be a cut sheet and with dimensions, and then, or I should say not with dimensions, this just shows you what you can get out of a sheet of NoRez. And that's a sheet of NoRez right there, and that comes in one size. Danny provides that in one size. And then there'll also be dimensional drawings that you can download and print if you want and cut the way I'm doing this. Now, it's not the only way to do it, but it's a way to get it done. So there's no question about, one of the big questions has been, can I install the NoRez before I assemble the cabinet? And I got to be honest, that's something I hadn't considered. I always did it unless I was building a cabinet that I would have no access to the interior of when I assembled it. I always figured on doing this after the fact. So for whatever that's worth, yeah, and people have done it. You can do this before assembly. I do have a reservation about it though, and I doubt I'll do it myself because in assembly, I like to be able to look into the cabinet and see the corners, and by having this in the way, that view would be a little obstructed. Can't tell you that it doesn't work because people have done it, and they've sent me pictures of it. So it does work, and you can do it that way. But so I'm going to kind of regroup here and get these up on the table, and then we'll dive right in. And I'll try and make this short and sweet. You know that doesn't work because Peter's just long-winded. But anyway, we'll get back to you here in a little bit. All righty, here we are. Oh, I should say, hey everybody. If you guys have been watching Danny's videos, you'll see him say, hey everybody, and I kind of like it, and I think other people do too, so I may just start my videos like that. So let's talk about NoRez, and here's what I can tell you. I don't know everything about it, but that's a sheet of NoRez. This is a product that Danny at GR Research has made specifically for him. As far as I know, it's proprietary. And And not that it's made from some unobtainium stuff, but the configuration of this, and this is the best of my understanding, and I have looked into it to some extent, but I don't go down rabbit holes of theory just to be doing it sometimes. I shouldn't say that. I do too. On this product, it seemed pretty straightforward. So you've got two layers here. The first layer that has the adhesive on it, and by the way, that's self-adhesive on the back, is about controlling resonance. Now, my guesstimation on what this actually is in the world of soundproofing and damping of noise. There's a product called, what is it called? Mineral filled vinyl, I think. And this stuff is used in doing home theaters and stuff like that, where you take this really heavy vinyl fabric, and when they say mineral, they're talking about rocks. I mean, like if you ground up gravel out of your driveway to really fine stuff, those are minerals. And so mineral-filled vinyl, I think I'm saying that wrong. It's mass-loaded vinyl, and minerals are what, basically small gravel, are what make this even more effective. So it's a heavy layer, and when it's applied directly to a surface, it changes the resonant quality of that, whatever it's attached to. And so that's the first layer. And so NoRez, the way I understand it, does two things. It damps the panel, which is the box, and I'm going to show you a little demonstration here in a second. And so it takes the resonant frequency, I assume it lowers it. Anyway, it takes it more and more out of the audible range. And then the foam on here acts like box stuffing. And stuffing in a box slows down airflow and makes a box appear bigger to the drivers. That's the best way, and I am not technically adept at this, but by putting stuffing in a box, whether it's foam, whether it's, and that would be open cell foam. I don't think closed cell foam would work in the same way, but, and I may have that backwards. So take what I'm saying with a little bit of grain of salt, or use your own sense. I'm just trying to get a little information out there that seems to be sort of lacking. So whether it's polyfill, whether it's fiberglass, whatever that is, it changes the way air moves inside the box and makes a box appear bigger. So it's how you can get low frequencies out of smaller boxes. The box stuffing helps to assist that. So this product does both of those in sort of one shot. And like I said, there's another product, and I don't remember the name of it, but you can get it at, those guys that sell all this stuff. I don't know if I should mention names, but anyway, and what it does is it puts a foam layer behind the damping layer, and it's going to have similar effect, but it's not going to be exactly the same, because when the damping layer is attached directly to a panel, it changes the resonant frequency. When it's separated by a layer of foam, those qualities are going to be substantially reduced, because it's no longer what I'd call intimately attached. And when I say intimate, I'm not talking about anything other than very close and well-adhered contact. So enough about that. There's a sheet of NoRez. This is what it comes. That's 24 by 27, if I remember right. So, and I don't know, can you see that down there? No, you can't. Anyway, I've pre-cut all these pieces like the drawings I showed earlier. And this is the effect, and hopefully my mic will pick this up. This is the effect that NoRez has on a box. So you tell me which one of these has NoRez and which one doesn't. I hope that's clear to the microphone, but what it does is damps noise. Now, some of what you're hearing is my hands just slapping against the side of the cabinet, and hopefully what you're hearing, if you guess that this one is the one without NoRez, you were right. It's a little more hollow sounding, it's a little more echoey. If I shout into it, maybe that gives you some idea of what I'm talking about. So it damps the cabinet two ways. First of all, it damps the panel, and it also provides stuffing. So that's a theory, the way I understand it with NoRez. And sometimes NoRez is actually used in conjunction. When I'm building XLSs, I'll actually take a little bit of Dacron, or there's a type of, gosh, I'm trying to remember that. Anyway, it's a fill, like a fiber fill thing, and it's made especially for speakers, supposedly. It's probably not, and I think Danny actually likes fiberglass. But so they can be used in conjunction with one another, and I usually do. Depends on the design. I'd say defer to the designer on that one. Okay, so there in my long-winded way, I've kind of covered that. And oh, you know, one other thing I should cover. Danny, and I have suggested this to people too, you can do this with one sheet of NoRez. And the way I'm going to demonstrate here is actually using about a sheet and a quarter. I'm going to call it my over-the-top method. And by the way, I have drawn this so that if you don't want to use more than one sheet, the pieces just get smaller and their overlap changes a little bit. So in terms of actual sonic change, I can't verify that it's going to make a big one. Understanding how a panel is damped probably would help a little bit. So this is a side off of a cabinet. This was actually a mistake, but what I want to show you here is when you have a panel that's intersecting like that, it's the open areas, the panels between the bracing, that are going to be most affected by resonance. So where you have a brace running from here to the front or the back, or this brace running from side to side, the areas close to that, where the braces contact the cabinet, are going to be less resonant, because they don't, I mean, if you can kind of imagine a trampoline or something like that, you know, there's a movement that's between those areas of being highly braced. And man, I hope I'm explaining that in a way that makes sense. But so the key to getting NoRez in here isn't about covering 100% of the surface. It's covering the surface that's most likely to resonate in ways that aren't wanted. And those are going to be the areas, open areas outside of the bracing. So the corner is really well braced because you're tying one panel to another. This is well braced because you're tying one panel to another. It's the areas between those bracing, is that the way I want to say it? It's the areas between the corners that you can, yeah, I might be saying that in a way that doesn't make sense. Just suffice to say, think of a trampoline. The edges of a trampoline stay fairly stable, but the middle of the trampoline, where you bounce on it, moves a lot more. And think of panels in kind of the same way. That's a kind of a wacky analogy, but I think it's valid if you the way I look at stuff like this is if I can get it conceptually, then I can figure it out from there. So in the case of now, this is a front baffle, and there's bracing that comes right here on, and this is all assuming you're using the cabinet that I cut. And because of most of this being removed, most of the material being removed, there's not a whole lot of area that you can damp on the front panel, but you can certainly do it on the sides, which is the most important because these areas are the big areas that are unbraced. So that's probably the first, what do I want to say, priority. And then the back, and this is a tube connector back. So you've got port here, and you've got tube connectors there. The areas you want to damp are, again, these open areas. Now you've got bracing right there and right there, and that's what these slots are for on the sides, to locate those braces. And so the areas outside of that, you want this area, the unbraced areas are where you primarily want to concentrate on. So some of this you'll see lines on, and what those lines indicate is where I'm going to cut the foam layer of the NoRez, and I'm going to just peel that foam off. On the bottom of my cabinets, there's two holes that you need to leave unobstructed because that's how you're going to mount your crossover board. I'm assuming you're doing it the way I designed it. And so these two strips, even though the foam's on them now, they will actually be installed without foam. And the foam is really easy to get off. And I forgot to put up a knife here. I'm going to get one here quick. You can cut NoRez a lot of different ways. Oh, man. The foam is real easy to cut with a sharp utility knife. And I'll reiterate that. Sharp utility. Sharp being the key word. A dull one really doesn't work very well, but a dull knife doesn't work all that well for anything. So I just turned that blade around so it's a brand new edge. If you have access to a bandsaw, I find a bandsaw is the easiest way to cut this stuff. You can cut it on a table saw. You can cut it with a utility knife. I've heard of people using some heavy shears. There are as many ways to do it as there are people doing it, I imagine. But so to get the NoRez, or the foam off the NoRez, is really easy. I just put my fingers in there and just kind of roll it right off. And this becomes padding for who knows what. My garbage can in this case. So these are the two strips. And remember, you can download the sheets that will show you how to cut this so it works out in this cabinet. But these principles, you can apply to any cabinet. It doesn't matter. And you'll have, by the way, these are scraps that were left over when I cut all this NoRez out. And you can put these in places. You don't want to obstruct airflow from the back of the woofer, but I don't think there's a place where you can actually put too much NoRez. You can. It might be wasteful, but it doesn't hurt anything. So the way I'm going to do this. Oh, and I'll quickly. If I'm jumping around here, I apologize, but I am trying to kind of speed through this a little bit. So here you'll see, that was actually my key and by the way, when I cut this out, I actually drew it all out on the back of the NoRez with a Sharpie. And what I'm doing here, this is the piece that goes right in alongside the woofer. And I'm cutting back the foam because I don't want it to restrict any air movement right at the back of the woofer. This is the way I've always done it. It may be minutia, but hey, I'm Peter. I'm all about the minutia. So easy to do. You can do this with a straight edge. Freehand is fine. Nobody's going to be looking inside the box. It doesn't have to be pretty. And that's coming from somebody who's all about the details. This is one area where looks just don't matter. The drivers won't know the difference. The cabinet won't know the difference. The electronics feeding the speaker won't know the difference. It's just not important. So I mark on there with a Sharpie. I make 2 or 3 passes with my sharp utility knife, and that peels right off. And you can even see there, I miscut that because I'm looking at the camera and I'm doing 2 things at once. That's plenty good. That doesn't make any difference. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all these, and I'll just show you one more time. So here's the other side, and this is the back. You'll see all this if you download the and how I've cut these. So that's the area that goes around the port, and I tried to make it really simple, just nice straight 90-degree cuts, and you don't have to cut circles and complex shapes and stuff out. But you'll see these lines on here. These areas, maybe I can illustrate this a little bit. So when this is assembled, this is the back, and this is the side piece. And what's going to happen is this 3/4 inch of NoRez foam will be removed and will actually go underneath there. And I should probably tell you something here. You'll see it in the drawings. When I drew this, there's 3/8 of an inch of clearance everywhere from the edges of the cabinets on the inside to the NoRez. There's also a 1/4 inch between any 2 adjacent pieces, a 1/4 inch or more. So it's not critical in terms of placement. It can be close, and that's plenty good enough. And trust me, if I'm saying that, it's true. Not that I know it all, but in terms of understanding how resonance and cabinets and panels work, it just is not a huge factor. So once again, here I am. This is the area that's going to go around this area right back here. And so the method I'm showing you is what I'd call the over-the-top method. And it's going to take more than 1 sheet of NoRez. And this is a little hard for me. I have lots of this stuff around. Whenever I ordered kits from Danny, I would get extra NoRez, and so I have some sheets, and I save pieces. So I have a box full of bits and pieces, so I can often use this in ways that kind of fill in the blanks. You can get 95% of what I'm doing here with 1 sheet. So don't feel like you're compelled to do that, because it's not inexpensive. I think Danny gets $45 or something for NoRez. And I consider it worth it because it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. And it's proprietary. He has it made because he saw a need, and it does indeed fill that need. So I'm going to blast through cutting all these out, then we're going to get on to actually installing it in there. I'm going to get a fresh blade. Much better. I turned that blade around and assumed I had not used that, and that was a wrong assumption on my part. Sharp blade makes this go a whole bunch easier. All right, I've prepped all that stuff. Oh, one thing I wanted to talk just a little bit about, you're probably thinking, well, how does he know there's minerals in there? I can tell you, when I cut this on the bandsaw, I see sparks every now and then. Not crazy, like you're cutting metal or something, but that tells me that, and I don't know if you've ever taken two rocks and smacked them together, but you can get sparks that way. And so that's what led me to believe that there's some high mineral content in that damping layer. Okay, so the order in which you do this isn't hugely important, but having a game plan is. I think, oh, and I'm going to use a little tool here. So because I told you, or not because I told you, but because I drew this all with 3/8 of an inch around the perimeter of panels, and by that I mean, you'll see on the drawings, I mean that when I drew, I came in 3/8 of an inch, which by the way, that's 3/8 of an inch, from the edges. Now you'll see at the top and bottom on the drawings that it looks like it's about double that on the top and the bottom. And that's because of the way that the top, and I don't have a top here, but the top drops into the cabinet 3/8 of an inch. So that's why that looks that way. That wasn't a mistake. That was actually taking into consideration what happens when it's assembled. So the way I'll typically do this, I'll do the sides first because I consider them to be the most important, and they're also the biggest pieces. So kind of, you do have to fit them through the woofer hole, which does work. I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people have some difficulty imagining, is that, wow, how am I going to get that in there? And all the way I've done this, it's not exactly a drop-in deal, but it's not hard to put in. Before we start, the inside of your cabinet has to be clean. If it's got a lot of sawdust, or maybe you've shot paint in there or something like that, best to clean it out. I use air pressure, and because I happen to have lots of air pressure around here. And I'll sometimes use, I'll be right back. I'll sometimes use a tack rag. You saw me use this, I think, in one of the finishing videos. Tack rags have some kind of waxy stuff on there, and what they do is they grab onto dust and remove it. And this is one part that I can be kind of informative on, adhesives, and specifically what's called PSA, or pressure sensitive adhesives. And they can be really, really good in terms of their holding power, but all adhesives are going to be compromised if there's something between the adhesive and the panel that you're trying to adhere it to, or whatever it is. And so making sure that you're not installing on top of dust or debris. And this is another area why I kind of harp on not glue running everywhere, because if you have glue drips inside the cabinet, you're going to have to take those off to get a good bond. You want a really good bond, and that takes two things. First of all, it takes a clean surface, and it also takes some pressure. PSA is pressure sensitive. That's what they call it that. So there is a moment in time when you're installing this, or when one is installing this, that you can kind of place it. But the minute you put pressure on it, it will start to do the job it was intended to do, and that's glue itself to the side. I mean, like nobody's business. This is crazy good adhesive, and it can be a little frustrating at times to work with, but knowing that it's going to stick if it gets any pressure on it might be helpful. So we'll press on. And you guys know by now that I just talk and talk and talk. So I would always say, make sure that this fits, first of all. Put it in the cabinet. This is all before you take the release paper off the back. Put it where you want it and say, okay, that fits. And if you want to, double check that, you can take the one above that. And see, it really does all fit in there through the hole. And you can hold them in there and say, yep, that works. And because of all the clearances I built in, you can guess at a lot of this. And I'm not one to advocate guessing in many cases, but in this case, close is plenty good. And here comes, probably want to get stuff out of your way when you do that. And again, feel in there, make sure you don't have dust and stuff like that. This is the right side. Oh, and another thing I should mention, everything in this cabinet, of course, is mirrored. So you have two sides, top and bottom. They aren't identical. So when you cut these out, make sure that you're making mirrored copies because they're going to go in the cabinet like that. And that's the voice of experience. I've done this enough to where I don't do that very often anymore, but I have cut wrong where I cut all rights or all lefts without even thinking about it. So when you get ready to do the release paper, you want to keep your fingers off of it. Anything that touches this surface will make it less inclined to stick well because you're contaminating that interface between the PSA and the side that you're putting it on. And I mean, that's not going to kill the whole deal. It's not like you have to be pristine like an operating room. But I'm just putting that in there. And oh, this is where the spacer comes. If you have a little spacer like this that's 3/8 of an inch, I like to stick that in there. So what I'm doing is standing that piece of NoRez up on that 3/8 spacer. It just makes it a little easier for placement. And then I look in the cabinet and I eyeball this. And that might seem cavalier or something to me I just eyeball it. It really is good. It's fine in this case. And you can, this is a really hard thing to describe, but when you're placing this, I'm just resting it in there. I'm not putting any pressure on it. And you can kind of pick it up and move it around. The minute that you do put pressure on it, and I can tell you right there that my little spacer was stuck to the back of the panel because I kind of shoved it against that because I wasn't really paying attention. And so I'm pushing that in, and somebody mentioned in a comment on the video, it'd be nice if you could come in close and show what I'm actually doing. I wish I could do that. My cameraman is a tripod, so I may take the camera after this or take my my other camera and shoot some photos so you can see this. You're going to have to kind of imagine along with me here. So I got that where I wanted it. Now I'm just pushing in on it. And once you've done that, it's pretty hard to undo. So be sure it's where you want it. And I sometimes wait until I've got several pieces installed, but you want to go around and make sure that's firmly pressed down everywhere. You can't put too much pressure on it. And I used to do a lot of cabinet refacing, and I used PSA glue on the back of veneer extensively. I mean, like miles of this stuff. So a lot of this comes from experience doing that, not all just with speakers. Oh, you want again? Okay, we're looking in there. We're making sure we got the right piece. Another thing I've done is grab the wrong side, turn that around. Remember, that's going to go behind the woofer. So I'm setting that on top of my little spacer. And then I'm just eyeballing it. And that looks good. I'll pull my spacer out. And by the way, this is an aid, but it's not a critical thing. You can certainly do it without that. So there's the bottom on this side. Yeah, that might be kind of interesting to see. There's a difference between a damp side and the other side. Pretty scientific, huh? So here I am. And by the way, all these notches you see in here, these are going around the braces. So again, there's 3/8 of an inch of clearance. So if there's glue oozing out, if it's right in the crux of where a brace meets the side or a side meets a front or something like that, it's no big deal. But if you've got glue drips running down, take a chisel or something and just knock them out of there. Because this isn't real conformable. It'll conform to a big curve or something like that, but to try and get it to squash down over a BB or something like that, I don't know why there'd be a BB in there, but I'm using that for the sake of visual demonstration. There I'm sitting on top of my spacer, looking in, all looks good, give it a little push, pull my spacer out, put it down below. I'm going to the next piece, so that area where I remove the foam, that's going to go behind the woofer. Probably most people will be spending more time cutting all this out than they will actually installing it. Installing it is actually pretty easy. And now is a good time to kind of reach in the cabinet. And what I do is I just work my way around and put as much pressure as I can with my hand on as close to 100% of that area as I can. And on some bigger surfaces, on cabinets where I'm installing this before I'm finishing it, maybe I've got pieces, or before I'm assembling it, which is the case, not with XLS so much, but in, say, for example, the SLS, you've got a whole bunch of cabinet down here that you can't get your hand into once the box is assembled. So that really does need to be pre-installed. And I'll sometimes use a laminate roller like that and roll it down. It's not critical. That probably comes from refacing cabinets. Where we actually made a real big effort to get it 100% stuck, because it's really important in that case. You're working with something that's really thin. So all I'm doing is just going around there and kind of working my way back and forth across that, making sure that everything is good and stuck. And at this point, if you needed to take something off, you're probably going to tear something up. It won't hurt the cabinet, but the NoRez will probably get damaged. Not a huge deal. Again, if you broke it, or broke the damping layer or something, and you could still get it off, you could probably reuse it. But if you're doing this for the first time, you'll know exactly what I mean. It really is. And this much I can tell you also about PSA, pressure sensitive adhesive, is the bond gets stronger over time. So whatever strength it's bonding with now will get greater over, I don't know, period of time, day or two or something like that. And I got a little out of order here, because I was too concerned about talking to the invisible guy that is my tripod and camera. And normally I would install these first. So these go on the bottom, and let me grab a bottom here so I can show you what's going on. So that's the bottom of a cabinet, and by the way, y'all know if you've done these that the bottom is the same as the top. So what I'm doing is I'm installing these two strips, and I'm leaving the center open so those mounting screws for the crossover board are still available. And so hopefully that graphically demonstrates that. And I really thought about this in the drawings too, and thought, well, what I want to do is I want to make sure that, and by the way, this stuff sheds a little bit. When I cut it, some of the debris stays in the foam, even though I kind of shook these off, and I think I even blew some of them off. I always put my hand in there and make sure that that area is clean. And there's a thing I probably can't stress enough. The area has got to be clean for the adhesive to be as effective as it can be. So here I'm setting those in there, and I'm eyeballing those holes. And theoretically, I left a 1/4 inch between those two pieces. You know, in practice, that might be 3/8, it might be 1/8. Putting a screw through this stuff is not going to be easy, and finding the hole is not going to be really easy. And so here, because I'm removing the foam, all really that's working here is the damping layer. So the stuffing layer of NoRez, obviously not there, but damping that bottom. The way I looked at all of this was when I designed the cabinet, which I started with Danny's basic design, but I added a brace. All that was about how best to damp the panels. You probably can't over damp the panels. You could conceivably overstuff a cabinet, which is maybe an important thing to sort of recognize that there's a difference there. This isn't one-dimensional. It has two functions because there's two different materials in play here. So I just pushed those onto the bottom, stuck them, and maybe I can do this test again. I don't know if that's audible. Anyway, it definitely damps it. And so the bottom and the front are the two areas that are not, or I should say not damp, but less damped. And so I like to put NoRez in there. It's probably overkill, but when didn't I overkill stuff, right? So then on the back and the top, so these two areas, you want to make sure and kind of picture this in your head. So that's actually, if you were looking into the cabinet, this would be the top, just like I have it oriented. And you know, if you're unsure, put it in the cabinet. Make sure it fits. Put it, you know, all the pieces in there if you want to. And so this edge is going underneath the foam on the side. And what that does is cover just a little bit more of the panel. Like I said, I don't think there's such a thing as over damping, at least in any way that you could do it in a speaker box. And oftentimes overkill is kind of my way of doing things, but I do kind of draw a line about just waste of material or being silly, which I think is worthwhile. So I just kind of place that by feel. I do a lot of things like that. And I look in there, it looks good to me. Actually, I'm going to move it down just a smidgen, make sure that the port isn't going to be trying to shove through foam. And then set that piece. For those of you who, I consider myself probably a little OCD, maybe a lot. And, you know, just know that if These things aren't exactly parallel or they're shifted off to one side. It is no concern. It is just no concern. And for someone who's all about the details, that's kind of a hard thing to accept. So I'm with you if you're there with me, but trust me when I tell you, it's not worth busting a gusset over. So these, I should point out, that hole is not, or I should say that cutout is not exactly in the center. So if you cut these out like I have, you want to be certain that you got them oriented right. It probably wouldn't be critical if you did because it just shifted up or down a little. But you don't want to obstruct those holes because they will come back to haunt you later if you have to drill through the stuff. So I'm just kind of dropping that in place, not putting any pressure on it, making sure I got it where I want it. And then when it is, I just give it a push, and then I can go about, putting several pieces in and then push it all at once if you want to. But that part is fairly critical. The stuff would stick without pressure, but to get the most out of the damping layer, that really as close to 100% contact that you can get is a good thing. So there I've installed the area around the port, and I'm just going around pushing all that down tight. And you can push your fingers or your thumb or whatever underneath that adjacent foam on the side and just push that down nice and tight. This adhesive is so aggressive. When I built other cabinets, sometimes you have to kind of conform the NoRez and bend it, and man, I swear it's like it sort of jumps out of your hand onto the surface. But in a case like this, it's not bad. I mean, if you just rest that in there like that, the adhesive won't grab until you start putting pressure on it. Now these, I should maybe point this out. That's the front of the cabinet, and the reason I know that is because I've got adjacent foam on two sides here. So I've got the top and the back intersecting that. I did an exploded view to where I just splayed the sides and I splayed the top and bottom just to illustrate visually how this can work out, because I knew I would have difficulty trying to explain it. And here I am going against my own advice, not making sure I kind of test drive this first. And if the foam is touching, in some way like that, it's not a big deal. The air movement inside the box isn't so precise that it's going to be changed by something like that. So to give you an idea, I don't know how well the camera sees in here, but this part will go under the rear NoRez. This part will go under the side NoRez. So I don't know if that's obvious, but so that's going to fit in there like that. I don't know if that can be seen by the camera, but I guess all that to say, have a game plan. Always my thing. Have a game plan, because if you assume things, I guess I always look at it and say, yeah, you well know what assuming does, right? And this stuff is really easy because you're dropping in place. You're behind the brace, or I should say, in my case, the brace is right there. The brace is going to be right there, and the rest of it is eyeball. And just to give a little bit of insight, I kind of tucked that under the foam on the back and then slid it under the foam on the side. It's going to be obvious to you. I think, when you start doing this. I mean, it really does, it's not even like a puzzle. I mean, it really just goes together in a kind of a logical way. But notice I didn't even check that. Since I already did one cabinet, I know my cuts are going to be. And these top pieces, they actually could be one piece, but I in an effort to kind of make this understandable, I drew these as separate pieces. If you wanted to connect them, it would just make installation a little bit harder. It would not change the qualities of damping. That it just wouldn't change it. So sometimes I get a little lost for words. But I got lots of them, so if you've watched me, you know what I'm talking about. Somebody commented on one of my videos, "You talk too much." And I thought, yeah, probably. But I assume that, you know, people are watching it and taking something away. It's my intention. All of this is about kind of passing whatever little knowledge I have on to someone who maybe hasn't done it as much or doesn't want to research it as much, or whatever the case. And honestly, folks, I got to tell you, I'm just slightly honored that anybody watches these videos. I know they're long, and maybe I go on and on, but it's who I am. I like details, and I like passing along my theories, however harebrained they might be, and that people will take the time to watch. I'm flattered. I really am. And you know, I didn't come onto YouTube thinking, well, I'm going to be the next sensation. Honestly, it never even crossed my mind. There was so much about YouTube that I didn't know. It's been a real discovery process for me. So these are pieces that are left over. You know, the areas between the braces, I guess if you wanted to use that up, you could do that. So again, I'm sure you can't see here. You can fill in if you want to. I don't. And in the case of the XLS, I do take a little bit of stuffing and put right back in the back of the cabinet. You want to keep it clear of the port. But right behind the woofer, a little gob about the size of my fist, maybe my open fist. And I sometimes will kind of bring it up around the port, but you don't want to have anything in front of the port. There should be a clear shot throughout the cabinet. What do I want to say? If you can imagine a sound wave coming off the back of the woofer, you don't want to restrict that flow going out the port, because that would actually change the port tuning a little bit. So I think we are at the end of the road, and for me, this is probably a short video, and I don't know how long it is. I won't know until I edit it. But you know, I'm just going to close up here and say, hopefully this gets people a little of answers of some questions that you had, and get you a little further down the road of building your own speakers. And again, I really am grateful for the people who would watch this and use it as instruction. It was really my intention, but when I get the notifications on my computer and say someone else has subscribed to my channel, I think to myself, oh, wow, look at that. Somebody really wants to learn this. Or I don't know, maybe they just like listening to me talk. I don't know. But anyway, that's it for now. Folks, this whole COVID-19 thing, it has sent change through every aspect of almost everybody's life, and I can't stress enough that you know, for me, I've reconnected with family. Not that I was disconnected, but you know, we have family kind of weekly Zoom meetings now, and I'm kind of of all the hardship that it's causing, I guess there's one aspect that I really like, and that's the kind of teamwork aspect, and we can do it, and that kind of thing. It's inspiring to me. So, you know, if you're in a place where you can, be sure and be kind to your neighbor. Be safe about the potential, I guess, and we'll see you the next go-round. I really don't know what's next, but my imagination never shuts off, so there'll be something. See you later, folks. I had one other thing that I should add to this. It's not a concern right now because we're summer weather, but the other thing that PSA adhesive, and it's actually redundant, it's PS adhesive, but it likes to be fairly warm. If you're trying to install it when it's 50 degrees in your garage or wherever you're doing it, it's not going to like that very well. And I don't know what the specific recommendation is, but oftentimes with stuff like that, they're saying 70 degrees and up. I have, in my shop here in the wintertime, I don't keep it all that warm, and so it's like 62, 63 degrees. And I have been known to take a hairdryer and just lay in there and let it blow in for a few minutes just to kind of increase the interior temperature of the cabinet and get that adhesive more sticky. How's that for a technical term? And then pull the hairdryer out. And I'm not talking about hot. It's a hairdryer. We're not talking about, I'm just talking about raising it a few degrees. And then go around and give a push on all that stuff. Just something to keep in mind. Not a big deal, but something that I did want to mention and didn't. So there it is. See you later. Hey everybody, it's Peter again. And as I was editing the video, I thought there was something I kind of left out, and that was about box stuffing beyond what NoRez does. And so I thought I'd kind of do a brief overview and just show you how I do it and how it can be done. So in the world of box stuffing, there's a number of different things you can utilize. That's Dacron, polyfill. This is sheet stuff, and you can get this at fabric stores, places like that. This is the same material, only it's just gobbed up. I think you would use this in pillows and stuff. So instead of being sheet, which by the way, you see that in a lot of commercial speakers, I think probably because it's pretty easy to install. This stuff is more globular. Is that a word? Anyway, this is fiberglass insulation, and all this will have the same effect. There's one product that they claim, and this is Acousti stuff, which is the name I was trying to remember when I was doing the other video. And that claims to be specifically for speaker building. I can't attest to the veracity of that. I don't know. It's definitely different in consistency. And I use it, get it in these bags like this. Fiberglass, it has similar qualities. I guess there might be preferences on some people's behalf, but my big beef with this, having been in the remodeling world for a long time, is it's kind of itchy to use. I don't think it's, your preference is your preference, and if you have this around, you can use it. It's inside a speaker box, so it's not like you're inhaling it all the time. So then this stuff, like I said, is basically the same thing as that, just in a little bit different form. And so that being said, Acousti stuff, you can I'll leave a link. And by the way, I think I forget to say this. There's always links in the descriptions on my videos to pertinent products, and I'll try and be better about doing that. And this even comes with instructions, which I've never read, I don't think. But anyway, quickly, this is how I would stuff an XLS box. So let's get this stuff out of the way. If you were using sheets, I would probably use about half of that. If you're using polyfill, either sheet or gob, I think I said a large fistful, and that's about what I would do. And it's real easy to place. Again, this is not about accuracy or precision. I would put that in the box like that, and I got some plastic with it there. That might be a little bit much, and this box does not have a port in it, and I don't know how well the camera sees in there. I'll shoot photos, by the way, of the interior of this box so that you can look and see what it's like when it's actually installed. So you don't want this up against the back of the woofer, but you want it to be covering the back of the cabinet. And by the way, this is sort of optimization. If you didn't even put this in, it wouldn't be any huge deal. But so a little bit behind the woofer, and I usually take some, and when the port's in there, you can kind of pack a little around the port. Don't want anything in front of the port opening, but I can't attest to the effectiveness of that, but it makes me feel better to put it there. So make yourself feel better however you need to. And so this stuff is kind of very consistent in terms of its density. And I'll find this. This is something I got locally, probably Walmart or someplace like that. And now acoustic stuff is a little bit different. It's definitely denser. And what they do say, and I remember this from, I guess maybe I have read those instructions, but it was a long time ago. What they want you to do, so there's my, I would probably use a gob about like that. And so that'll give you an idea. This is how big my hands are. This is how big the gob is. And the thing about this stuff is it's inconsistent in density. I mean, it seems to be sort of random. And what you want to do with this is to kind of pull it apart and take some of that density out. And I actually have probably more than I want there. And so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of sticking my hands in there and pulling that out and getting it to be a little more fluffy. There's a technical term, fluffy. So fluff it up a little bit, get those, I like to get a hold of those gobs. And this stuff, I think you can buy several different places. I'll put a link to someplace. And then, I don't know how well the camera sees this. So just putting it in there loosely, not packed it in, just loosely filling, and come up a little bit, maybe just below the port, or if you want to, around the port. And that's it. So that's box stuffing in addition to NoRez. And that can actually be done to your preference. So you could try without, and if you want to experiment, you can take and do what I did just then and listen to the difference. These are going to be subtle differences. This is not taking the speaker from, a low level to a high level of precision or accuracy or anything like that. But it will change primarily the lower frequencies. I don't think it has any effect on real high frequencies. So you can experiment. There's no absolute there, I'm afraid, unless you were manufacturing speakers, you'd want to make them all consistent. When you're building your own, you get the choice of doing a little fine-tuning on your own. So that's it for now. I just wanted to cover this. I'm going to just add this as an addendum to the previous video. And so see you later, folks. Hope that clears up that error a little bit.